Each day on Idaho Matters, through a wide range of topics, you'll hear from neighbors and friends about the ever-evolving social and cultural landscapes of Idaho. Listen to the Idaho Matters podcast at boisestatepublicradio.org today. From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Residents of East Boise looked on with trepidation as last month's Valley Fire burned through more than 10,000 acres of the Boise Foothills. Now, some folks were told they might have to evacuate their homes, and Warm Springs Road was actually closed for a time before firefighters were able to knock down those flames. More and more homes are springing up in and along the foothills in what's known as the Wildland-Urban Interface, and the Boise Fire Department is actively working to make sure those homes can survive a wildfire. They're doing this by testing a new app that creates a plan for each individual property. So here to tell us more is Assistant Boise Fire Chief Romeo Gervais. Romeo, really nice to have you on the program.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. I appreciate being here.
So let's first talk a little bit about the Valley Fire. I have to tell you, I live in East Boise, not out where that fire was, but I could see it. And I tell you, it was incredibly disconcerting. And I think one of the reasons why is it's been a really long time that we've seen such a big fire so close to the city. So can you just remind us of this? It sparked in early October. I mean, how close did it get to residences?
Yeah, it pushed right up to the backside of the city of Boise there. So we were literally burning off fuels, if you will. So that's one of the things we do is we burn fuels between the fire edge and where we want to stop it. And we were burning fuels just outside the backyards of residences. So very close to homes.
And also, Romeo, remind folks too, I mean, I think what kind of also got folks' attention was when you had to close Warm Springs, because all of a sudden schools out there were closed for the day. And
Yeah,
that was just
absolutely.
protocol,
One of
right?
our kind of big concerns, if you will, anytime we have a wildfire is our residents and the safety of our residents. And when we look at the fire, we make decisions as far as evacuations or closing roadways to kind of keep people out of the area for a couple different things. One's to keep them safe, and then one's really to give our firefighters and apparatus room to work. We do a lot of operations where we're moving from place to place. As the fire front moves, we'll kind of move those engines or those groups of engines to protect the homes as it goes.
And I would think, Romeo, I mean, you at the Boise Fire Department have probably been preparing for a fire like this, right? That comes into your jurisdiction, that really gets close to these neighborhoods. In particular, when we look at East Boise out in the Warm Springs area, how many homes, how many neighborhoods have sprung up in the last decade or so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what was really a big, I would say, eye-opener for us was that Oregon Trails fire a number of years back. And since that time, we've really evolved as a fire department. We work very, very closely with our cooperators, such as Boise Bureau of Land Management over here in Boise. They are a great partner and bring a ton of assets. Where this fire actually did start over kind of in their jurisdiction and then burned into the city of Boise. But through training, through cooperation, through planning, we're able to work very closely with them, and we integrated seamlessly. Our structure fire engines were parked, and literally when we were doing some of those burn operations, our crews carried a torch, if you will, and burned off and directly handed off to the BLM crews, who then continued that operation to build that fire line and protect those homes.
So I mentioned the term Wildland-Urban Interface. For folks who may not live in that area, can you explain to us what that is and what it means?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best thing is as you kind of said, is we are seeing wildfire problems, if you will, throughout the nation and certainly here locally. But as we continue to build homes into areas where traditionally have been grass fuels, trees, things like that, the Wildland-Urban Interface is that interface between kind of our traditional city, where we have lots and blocks and houses, with our wildland. So it's the Boise National Forest, but it's also BLM and grassland. So slightly different fire conditions, but anytime we build a home into that interface where it's the transition from kind of an urban corridor into a rural wildland or forest or grass fuels.
So, what is the best way then to protect homes in neighborhoods that are cropping up in the wildland urban interface?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts off with proper planning. One of the things that we do have here in the city of Boise is a wildland urban interface code, which mandates how structures are built, and we start to look at how we build out subdivisions and how we make sure we have access and water supply, as well as placement of homes in lower risk areas. It's not a no risk area, but can we
Hmm.
not place it at the top of a chimney where fire may run up a valley or a gully, if you will, and not put the home right on top. So we work very, very hard in the front end to build homes appropriately and plan for them. But then as we continue to move into the existing neighborhoods as well as the new neighborhoods, really that next part comes into play where we really need the homeowners to assess their homes, proper plantings, proper maintenance of their homes, cleaning gutters, things like that. And that's really where that app comes into play.
And there's something called a defensible space as well, correct? Like creating that around a home. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of divide defensible space into a couple different categories. That first category is really right up close to the home, the kind of that 0 to 5 foot range. And that's where we really want to limit primarily any combustible materials. We prefer to see rock mulch. We prefer wood fences not be directly attached to homes in those areas. We want to make sure any plantings that we do have really meet those firewise classifications and have low propensity to fire spread or fire production, and that protects the house. So we don't have a way to spread the fire directly. We next move
So,
out to the 5 to 15 foot zone, and that's where we start to have some plantings, but we limit and we spread them out, and then we go out further from that, the 15 to 30 foot zone, where we can have more plantings, but it's kind of a staggered step down effect, if you will. So really up close to the homes, we try to limit combustible materials at all, and then as we move out, we allow more and more combustible materials spaced out.
I'm really kind of envisioning what that area of Warm Springs looks like, especially up in the foothills off of Warm Springs. And what you just described is exactly what so many of these homes and neighborhoods look like. But does that go back to what you said? Is that, homeowners do have to abide by these rules and regulations that the city has put in place.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, a lot of those homes where this fire burned were meeting that new building code, right? So they have
Hmm.
appropriate building construction materials, appropriate roofing materials, appropriate siding materials, appropriate setbacks to their back lot lines so that we can protect and defend those homes. Like I say, the thing that comes into play though next is really that vegetation management. So maintaining those bushes, cleaning up leaves, cleaning the gutters, things like that, that we have to go back and check every so often. And that's really where those home assessments and the homeowners can do their parts.
Hmm. So I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you have a new app, and this will actually show homeowners how to create a safer buffer around their homes, like you just described. So can you tell us how the app works, and I guess what's the app called?
Yeah, so it's just called the Boise Wildfire app, if you will. We were reached out to by a partner group, if you will, Janus Research Group, and the Western Fire Chiefs, and they said, "Hey, we've got this new app, and will you kind of check it out for us?" And so they were developing an app that they got grant funding through the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Kind of one of the things that NIST does is offer a public safety innovator application or grant, which funds things like this. So the app is really intended to do a couple of things. The first one is education. So there's a number of components in the app that talk about everything we just talked about: defensible space, structure hardening, cleaning gutters, things like that. And it walks the homeowner through different components where you can click on different things and get information directly what we just talked about, right? Fences attached to
Hmm.
homes, cleaning gutters, having the right roofing materials and siding materials as well as plant materials. The next part of the app is what really intrigued us, and this is kind of the augmented reality or the artificial intelligence piece, is that through using your iPhone instead of some expensive device or fancy device that maybe a homeowner doesn't have, they're
Hmm.
able to walk around their home, take pictures, and or use their camera in video mode to kind of start to get identification of different plants or different doors And when they click on those plants or the doors, they get that same information put to them. So, for example, when it goes over a plant, you can click on the plant and it starts to talk about those defensible spaces. It starts to talk about how you can mitigate that risk.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I mean, it's real time then as well, right? If someone's got their phone out there and they're, thinking like, okay, well, I have got this plant, is it a good plant to have or is it not?
Yep, that's accurate, right? And it's still, I would say it's still a beta app, right? So we're
Uh-huh.
still working through identifying all those plants and identifying all those things. And as it collects more data, the app gets better, if you will, right? So the developers then can refine the app. We are the first community to use this app. So it's still got some bugs. It's still working through, but really this rollout is really to help inform and make the app better for everybody.
So anyone who lives in this Wildland-Urban Interface, I'm assuming you would like to download the app. So how do folks find the app so that they can do that and start using it, even in this beta testing phase?
Yep, absolutely. So we have links on our social media pages that folks can navigate to, as well as I think you're going to share it on your web
Uh-huh.
version of this as well. So that would be the best place to navigate to is that link. Once you click on that link, there'll be some survey components because really what we're trying to ascertain too through this Janus research group is how effective is this app in educating our homeowners? Because if we're not educating, if we're not achieving that mission, we probably need to tweak the app a little bit, right? So our
Mhm.
goal is really to give the residents the education in their hands to be able to mitigate their own risk.
Before I let you go, how critically important is it that people really understand the wildland urban interface, that they understand defensible space? Because you know as well as I know that growth isn't stopping in the Treasure Valley. We are probably going to see more fires like the Valley Fire, and they are going to be close to the city, if not within city limits, as we continue to see more neighborhoods being built in these areas.
Yeah, I mean the reality is we live in a fire-prone ecosystem. Fires have burned where the Valley Fire burned for years. If you go back and look at the historic fire regime, this is certainly not the first fire in this area.
Mhm.
What's different is now we are injecting homes into that wildland urban interface, right? So it is very important that we recognize that. Obviously, our residents want to live in those areas for the beauty of nature, things like that, which I 100% support. But we have to do our part. We have to mitigate our risk where we can. And things such as this app or such as defensible space or such as cleaning up leaves and gutters and picking the right plant materials becomes imperative not only for the safety of our residents, but the safety of our firefighters. For us to be able to work in those areas, we need the residents to do their part. And
Mhm.
we want to do our part too. So we want to help educate, we want to help fight the fire when we have to. But if we can prevent the fire and mitigate the risks in the front end, that's better for everybody.
And my understanding as well is that if folks sign up to beta test this app, are they going to get in-person home assessments by the fire department?
Absolutely. And I would even add that, if you go to our AdaFac website, so adafac.org, you can sign up for home assessments whether you download the app or not. We have
Hmm.
several different members on our department who are trained to do that, and we would be more than happy to come out to your home and do a home assessment, walk around with you, talk about the different risks, talk about defensible space, talk about structure hardening. So I would highly encourage that, whether you download the app or not.
I don't want to be too dramatic here, but when I think about this app and I think about even the defensible spaces, especially when we look back on the Valley Fire, can these tools, whether it's the app, whether it's making sure you have the right vegetation around your home, save lives?
I believe they can. I do. I mean, it is a big, complex problem, and every little thing we can do to help solve it is what we need to do. It's not any one fix. It's not just defensible space. It's not just adequate fire departments. It's not just planting materials. It's not just planning. It's not just building construction. It takes the entire process to make it safer. But I do believe that by mitigating some of these home risks on the front end, and educating the homeowners about the risk, that they'll be better prepared, which then in turn allows our firefighters to be better prepared and better respond.
Hmm. And as you said, I mean, where we saw the Valley Fire, historically, there has been fire. So we all have to prepare for that.
I couldn't have said it any better than you just did.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this, in particular, this app that folks can use. So thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
We've been talking with Boise Fire Assistant Chief Romeo Gervais about a new app the department is testing to help people make their homes safer during a wildland fire. We'll make sure to put a link on our website so that if you're interested, you can download that app. Remember, it's in the testing phase, but the fire department really wants you to be able to test it and give feedback. Thanks so much for listening to Idaho Matters. Boise State Public Radio and Idaho Matters are members of the NPR network. It's an independent coalition of public media podcasters. You can find more shows in the network wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Gemma Gaudette. We'll see you tomorrow.
No matter what happens in Washington, the NPR Politics Podcast is here for you. For the latest news, insights, and analysis from the election and beyond, listen to the NPR Politics Podcast. No matter what happens in Washington, the NPR Politics Podcast is here for you. For the latest news, insights, and analysis from the election and beyond, listen to the NPR Politics Podcast.